Welcome back to another episode of She Vets It podcast, where we celebrate and amplify the experience of women veterans. I'm Althea, your host, and today's episode is nothing short of extraordinary. We are honored of hosting a true trailblazer, an Air Force veteran, military spouse, and the creative force behind the Airmen to Mom blog. She's also the host of the Empowering Women of the Military podcast, author of the Inspiring Girls Guide to the Military, and the visionary behind a mentorship program supporting military women. Please join me in welcoming the incredible Amanda Huffman to She Vets It. Amanda, it is so great to have you here. Your journey from serving in Afghanistan to creating a supportive community for women veterans is nothing short of inspiring. But before we dive into our conversation, I want to set the stage for exploring some of the key aspects of your incredible story. You to join.
Yeah, for sure. I was in the Air Force for 6 years, and I graduated high school the year September 11th happened. So 2001 September 11th happened, and then I graduated high school in 2002. And so I was really unaware of the world and everything going on in it. And I knew the military existed because obviously there were wars and stuff, but I didn't really realize that the military always existed. I feel really silly saying that now. But that kind of triggered an idea of maybe I should join the military. I'm kind of lost. I did go to college, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so a bunch of my friends were enlisting or in the National Guard and deploying. And so that kind of further sparked my interest. And so I ended up looking into enlisting into the Air National Guard. But as I was doing that, my friend was doing the Reserve Officer Training Corps program at the college that we were at. And he's like, before you enlist, let's have a conversation. And so he took me to lunch, told me all about what the difference between an officer and enlisted was, and then gave me a bunch of options and really recommended I look into ROTC. And so I did that, and that was how I joined. So before I was a podcaster, I was a blogger, and I had done a series called, or it's part of Write 31 Days. So you write every day in October. And so I had done it a few times and focused on different things. And I was like, instead of writing every day, I'm going to do all this prep work and I'm going to interview people and I'm going to talk about deployments. And so I was thinking it would be some women sprinkled in and then mainly men who talked about their deployment experiences. But I found that the only people who responded to my call were women, and they had these amazing stories about what they had done in the military. And I was just blown away by the things I learned, the history I learned. And so I was like, who cares about deployments? Let's talk about women in the military. And so that was where the idea came from. And originally I was going to do another blog series, but then that idea shifted to podcasting, and it was a lot easier to podcast because you can do the interviews back and forth. And I was doing written interviews, and then I'd send them questions and then they'd write back, and sometimes they would get lost. So podcasting was a really good switch in a way to capture those stories.
We were talking about you going from blogging to podcasting. Now, from one podcaster to another, what have you learned along the way? Because when you're podcasting and you hear so many different stories, they're inspiring. You learn not only about the veteran that's before you, but also you learn so much about yourself. What have you learned?
I think what I've learned that surprised me the most is that women have such commonalities and I'm not alone. I think when I left the military, I felt really alone, and I thought the reason I was struggling so much to transition out of the military was because I did it wrong, or I wasn't the traditional path. But then I start talking to other women and I realized that we all have unique challenges and circumstances, and there, even if we go into the workforce or we stay at home or we do something or we go to school, we still have these challenges. And so I think just hearing that I'm not alone has been really healing, and why I keep doing the podcast, because I love hearing the stories, but I also love hearing that I'm not the only one.
Was the reason of starting She Vets It was because so many of us isolate. And when we isolate, that's when in the veteran community, that's when there's more likely an increase of suicide.
Mhm.
And so having platforms like Women of the Military Podcast and She Vets It, it's an opportunity to hear other veteran stories to know, like, you know what? Yes, we all have it rough from time to time. Transition out the military that first year, we all struggled. You know, we all went through. No, it doesn't matter how prepared you are getting out the military, you are going to find a time where you are like, oh my gosh, where am I? What am I going to do? You know, because it's like not being able to see the future. It
Right.
sometimes could be the most fearful thing. Or going into the civilian workforce where you've never been before. For me, I joined at 39, but that was, you know, getting out was not the problem. It was getting out being disabled was the challenge. So I love the platform that you had, and I think we shared offline. We were talking about how there's 3 million women veterans out there, and when people think of veterans, they don't think of women. And
Right.
so having Women of the Military podcast, you know, She Vets It and Sisters Who Serve, you know, all the different podcasts that features the women veterans, those are needed to bring up some of those issues that we share, and to bring awareness to the general population. Like, yes, women we serve, they look like me, they look like you, they can look like someone's grandma, they serve too, you know. And when you see a woman that goes into the VA, or goes to a clinic, she may have possibly served, not her husband.
Right.
And so thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for just allowing your platform to be used to hear the voices of those unheard heroes. Share as a creator, you know, sometimes you get in that space where there's creator's fatigue. What do you do when you get to that point? You know, how do you get yourself back on track?
I don't. I'm kind of in creator fatigue like right now, so it's like a really interesting question because I'm trying to figure out like what's next for the podcast and like what do I want to do, and I feel like that's a question that the military doesn't prepare us to ask, like, what do I want to do next? And so I'm trying to like go through and figure out like what do I want to do, and if that means like stopping or cutting back, like how does that make me feel? And so I think staying focused on like what you're passionate about and remembering like why you're doing the work you're doing is really important. And and if you need to take a break or you need to like change something and like refocus, then do that. Because if I say no to doing more podcasting episodes, it doesn't mean that like I don't have to that I have to stop talking about women. Like it could open a door to something else, but if I don't close that door, then I won't know that it's there. So I think just having a lot of self-reflection and figuring out like what the next step is, and then being able to say no, it's time to move on and try something new.
I love that. Well, I would say your podcast is definitely needed. There are women who are ready to share their story. So, from one podcaster to the next, I want you to keep doing what you're doing. But not only do you do podcasting and vlog, but you also have a mentorship program, and you also provide a free publication for girls in the military. So those that
Yeah.
are interested in transitioning in the military, or even getting out of the military, can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, so I you talked about how like as like if you're a veteran and you get isolated, how that can like really have a negative effect on you. And so I wanted to create a way to not only help the next generation, because I think girls and young women who are considering the military need someone to talk to that's not their, like, this guy that doesn't understand what it's like. So I want to connect girls and young women with women who have served in the military. And then that also brings women veterans back into the military community where they can connect and share what their experience with the next generation. So that's like the idea behind the mentorship program. But I need to figure out, I have people signing up, but then I'm having a hard time getting everyone connected. And so I'm working on like what way I can do that and how I can do it without losing my mind. But
Right.
so that's one of the things that I'm working on. And then I have a girl's guide to the military resource on my website. That's like a 7 to 10 page document of just giving tips and advice. And because it was so popular and downloaded, I said, this needs to be expanded. So I wrote a book called A Girl's Guide to Military Service. And so this is for young women who are considering joining the military, and it has advice from, you know, the typical things of like, what branch should I join? Should I join as an officer enlisted, active duty, National Guard? What career field? But then it also has like practical steps to help you as you are in the military. Like, how do I get mentorship? How do I get through basic training? How do I figure out my finances? Military sexual trauma is something I've heard about in the news. Like, should I be worried about it? And what steps can I take to protect myself? And so I tried to cover as many topics as I could think of and got advice from other people on things that I didn't think of. And so I wrote that book and I'm really proud of it. And I just really want women to have it in their hands because I think that one of the things the military does really well is train you for the military, but getting you out. And I think if you have like a strong foundation and you know where you're going, it'll help you as you get out of the military.
Love the whole mentorship idea that you're talking about. It's so needed. I think I, was sharing with you offline that I talk to the recruiter out here about doing something in my local community because mentorship is so important, especially for new recruits, because that is going to help with decreasing the number of military sexual assault or trauma that many women veterans get out of the military. They say 1 in 5 are sexually assaulted in the military. And so if we reach our young girls now, we can kind of put them up on game like, look, let me tell you, when you go somewhere, you go out with your friends, especially in AIT, because in AIT, it happens in AIT. But hey, have a battle buddy. Never leave your drink, by itself, walk off and come back. You know, letting them know how to protect themselves is so important. And then also, they have someone that when they get out of boot camp or get out of AIT and they go to their first duty station, they have someone that they can call. They have someone, if they run into any problems, they have someone that is non biased, that doesn't necessarily work in their unit. There's no a conflict of interest for them to be able to navigate through the military successfully, how to plan their exit strategy. I always tell people, because I joined at 39, you need to have your exit strategy when you first join. And that starts with picking your career. Like, is it going to be transferable? Like, if I'm a mechanic now in the military, do I want to be a mechanic 20 years from now? Is that going to work? Or if I'm in cybersecurity or I'm in IT, am I taking advantage of all the certificates that I can actually get under my belt
Yep.
before I get out? And then am I connecting with some of those potential companies that I could possibly work for? And I always say go on
Yep.
LinkedIn and find the recruiters that you can connect with. So I definitely love everything that you're doing, and I want you to know, keep doing what you're doing. You are needed in this space. There's 3 million women veterans out there. We make up the fastest segment of the homeless population. We have so many different stories. I want our veterans to be heard. you have the platform, women of the military, because you want to hear those voices. So don't stop what you're doing, even when you get tired. I can't do it by myself. Other podcasters can't do it by themselves. We are more than just podcasters. We're more than podcasters. We are actually advocates for women veterans. It's a lot deeper than for us to jump on here and have conversations.
Right.
So I just want you to know that your platform matters. And when you get tired and you need some encouragement, you contact me. And look, same here, I'm gonna contact you, okay?
Yeah, it's a sisterhood. We gotta work together and not carry all of it on ourselves because, like you said, there's 3 million. I can't interview everyone. And so when I see more women veteran focused podcasts, I get so excited because I know that more people get to share their story. And when I started, I wanted the theme to be like your story matters because I think so many times we as women veterans feel like our story doesn't matter because we get beat down or we get told, negative things about like you didn't serve enough, you didn't do enough. And so I that's why I think it's really so important that for women to share their stories and to make sure people know that women do serve in the military and they are doing amazing
All of our
things.
stories need to be shared because someone out there could be lost and stuck. And so that's why they need to know what has Amanda gone through to be able to get to where you're at, where you have a podcast, Women of the Military. And sometimes those people's stories may inspire you as a creator. And sometimes it's when someone contacts me and say, Althea, thank you so much. That person that you had come on, she really, really helped me out, or someone who said they wanted to quit. They wanted to quit at life, but maybe it was something that maybe you or someone else have said that keep them going. So I really, really sincerely, I would love to support what you're doing because it's so important. And I always say that all hands on deck. I feel like what we're doing individually is actually adding up to something collectively, and that is making a difference in our women veteran community.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is next?
I'm not really sure. I've started doing new like focus episodes, and so I still do the stories of women, but I've been trying to do once a month a different focus topic on, mental health. And I did an interview with Corey Weathers on her new book, Military Culture Shift. And we talked about military culture and how it's changing and things that we are seeing that Generation Z is asking for and needs to consider the military as an option. And so I'm trying to do, and then I'm planning to do a talk about women's history for Women's History Month in March. And so I'm trying to do different like focus areas about different topics that are important to either women who are joining the military, women who've left the military, or women who are still serving, and just trying to find, I guess, a fun new take on ways to look at military stuff because I think it's really fun to hear the stories of women, but then there's also really important topics that we need to dive a little bit deeper on and focus on. And so I think that's kind of the direction that I'm heading. And I'm really excited about the conversations that I've got to record already and then the ones that I have planned for the future.
Are there any tips that you would like to leave for our women veterans that have already transitioned out the military that may be trying to find that next chapter? What's next, and how can they kind of jump over that hurdle of uncertainty?
So I think the best thing is to get involved with veteran organizations, even better if it's a women veteran organization, because it was through the conversations with other veterans that I realized that I wasn't alone in what I was struggling with and that people needed to hear my story. And so I think and there's so many resources out there for veterans that veterans don't know about, but if you get connected with the right veteran, then they will. So I was talking to someone yesterday for a podcast. I do another podcast for a software engineering company, and my guest was a veteran, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking about starting a business." And I was like, "Oh, explosion of information. Here's all these resources." And he was like, "Oh, okay." But I was like, "Do you know about IVMF? Do you know about Boots to Business? Do you know about like all these things that you can get access to and they're free?" And he was like, "No." And I was, so if you get connected with veterans, they know about all. So if you want to do something, if you want to start a business, there's like so many. If you want to do like travel or do sports, there's veteran organizations focused on that. And I think if you can get connected with other veterans, there's a lot of healing and then a lot of support. And so that'd be my main advice. And my two favorite women veteran organizations are Women Veteran Alliance, led by Melissa Washington, and then Women Veterans Interactive, which is led by Ginger Miller. Those are my top two that I'm really involved in and I really like to follow.
And I would like to add and follow podcasts like Women of the Military, because, like you said, when women veterans get connected and they listen to podcasts like Women of the Military or She Vets It and so many others, what happens is you find out about these organizations, like you said, like VWise, if you want to start your business, and so many different organizations that are out there that provides free resources like PGA Hope, free golf lessons for veterans, 6 to 8 weeks that are provided by professionals. So I definitely suggest that those that would like to find out more information about the veteran spaces really get connected with yourself. How can they connect with you?
Well, my favorite place to hang out is LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, be sure to connect with me there because that's where I'm the most active. And then you can always email me at airmantomom@gmail.com to learn more about the work that I'm doing or if you have an idea for collaboration. And then yeah, and then I have my blog airmantomom.com, and that's another good place. I do reviews or like summaries of all my interviews so you can see all the podcast interviews that I've done. There's over 260, so there's a lot of episodes and a lot of stories and a lot of resources.
Balancing roles as a military spouse, a mother, writer, a podcaster can be challenging. So, how do you manage these various roles, and what advice do you have for others striving to find balance in their lives?
So I think boundaries is the main thing that I've learned, and saying no to things that I don't want to do. I used to have a sign in my desk that said that my business coach gave me. She said, "This is your business. You can do what you want." So it said, "This is my business. I can do what I want." And then she had 4 questions like, "Is this something you want to do? Is this something worth the value of like energy that you're going to have to do?" And like going through those questions and figuring out like what I wanted to do. It goes back to the theme I've seen like veterans often don't know what they want. And so I had to teach myself like how to say no and then how to decide like if I should say yes or no and then be able to move on from it. And so I think that's like a really important thing that a lot of people talk about boundaries, but then I was like, "Oh yeah, I need boundaries. I have them." And then someone actually explained what boundaries were, like setting when you're going to work and when you're not going to work and like saying no when it's those times outside of it. And so I think those are really good tools. And then also like start really small. When I started blogging, I was writing for 5 minutes once a week because I had a brand new baby and I was just trying to survive. And that's where everything started. And then I just slowly grew over time, added new things, took things out, and now my kids are 8 and 10, so they're kind of, on their own, and my life's a lot different than when I had a baby. And so I think just like starting where you're at and then seeing where it goes, and then you'll find time. I don't know how you find time, but you find time to like find things that you're passionate about. So it went from 5 minutes to like writing every day, and then like now I have a pretty rigid schedule on like what I do and when I get it done.
Awesome. But I just want to thank you so much for just coming on and sharing your wisdom. And from one creator to another, keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference. You're inspiring so many others. And also, we need you in this space. We need not only to hear your voice, but hear those that will come through your podcast. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Wow, what an incredible journey and a wealth of wisdom that Amanda Huffman shared today. We're immensely grateful for your openness and insight, Amanda. Your story is a beacon of inspiration for our audience. That concludes our episode of She Vets It. But please make sure you follow Amanda on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Airmen to Mom. She is just an incredible individual that you definitely want to get into, support. And if you know another veteran that has an incredible story and you would like for them to be on She Vets It, make sure you email us at info@shevetsit.com, and also subscribe to us at shevetsit.com so that you can get the latest on what we're doing next. Again, thank you so much for viewing in, and we appreciate you. Until next time, I'm Althea signing off.